You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because I'm bad for your health. I come real stealth dropping bombs. I'm gonna stop right there. I'm a little embarrassed to know most of the lyrics to the song from Ice Cube. It's definitely not work family safe, but he gives great advice for us as Christians to, if I could paraphrase, evaluate our current spiritual health before we meet a disastrous outcome. One of the ways we can check ourselves is by looking at our temperature, spiritual temperature, and knowing which one, hot, medium, or cold, God prefers. Intuitively, I'd like to think that this order would be obvious. Being hot, on fire, totally committed to God makes sense to be the number one choice. God's preference for us is to be hot, not cold, right? This one seems like a no-brainer, but let's look at what God says to an ancient church in Laodicea to find out. He says, I know your deeds, that you're neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. And so, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. And it sounds like here that God would want us to be hot or cold rather than in between, which makes him want to vomit. How are we to understand this? If you think of hot as Christian and cold as not a Christian, then lukewarm would be sort of a tepid, kind of stagnant in-between Christian. And this sort of makes sense and is what I thought for most of my life. But it only works if you figure God would rather have people damned to eternal condemnation because they're cold than be undecided or lukewarm. Not going to work for me. Another possibility relies on an understanding of the city's plumbing, and this sounds just totally random, but may help give us a couple of checks. Watch this. Laodicea had their water piped in from an aqueduct 6 miles away. There were both hot springs and cold ones, and both of which were useful and beneficial when they were hot or cold. But if by the time the water traveled over the 6 miles, the hot had cooled off and the cold had warmed up, the water became lukewarm, kind of blah, and was of no use. Think a broken hot tub here, okay? So the temperature check is simply whether or not you're useful to God. Are you doing what he created you to do in the way he designed you to do it? Are you bringing health and wholeness to people or making them nauseous and want to vomit? A second check is the check of dependence. The people of Laodicea had bank, literally. They were one of the richest places around. They had banks all over. And so they said things like, we have so much money, we're so rich, we've got stacks on racks, racks on stacks, we don't need anything or anyone. When we become independent of God, rich in ourselves, the Bible says we actually become poor, pitiful, and naked. So check this. Are you living a life that needs God? Do you require him for your life to work, or can you get by without him? God says that if we do find that we're not being useful, or if we're independent, essentially our temperature is nauseatingly lukewarm, then we need to turn around and turn to him and open the door that he's knocking on. So let's check ourselves before we do wreck ourselves.